I'm going to talk about tactile and hyperspectral imaging sensors for mammary tumor characterization. No, this seems to be very sensitive. I'll leave it out there. Okay. This is a collaboration with my doctoral students, Amrita, Firdous, Vira, and E, and I'm Chang-Hee. The motivation for this talk is that when doctors, the veterinarians, have a dog or your pet, one of pets come in, they tend to have a mammary tumor, multiple tumors, and if a dog has mammary tumor, there's a 50% chance it's a malignant tumor or a benign tumor. A lot of the vets do not have any sophisticated CT scan or MRI scans or even ultrasound. So what they do is basically they either wait and watch. Yeah, I think there's interference between these two. So if I don't use that, is that okay? Maybe I'll just speak louder and not use the mic. So what vets really need is a device that can tell whether it's malignant or benign without going through biopsy. If you go through the biopsy, then you have to send the data to, just turn it off, I think. Thank you. No. If you go through biopsy, then what you have to do is you send it to the lab and get the results, whether it's benign or malignant. If it's benign, then they wait, and if it's malignant, they do the surgery again. So a lot of the times, the owner just go off surgery rather than the biopsy. So what they really need is a non-invasive, easy-to-use, low-cost device. And from the literature, we found out the malignant tumors are stiffer, larger, and less mobile and darker. There's more blood vessels forming. So the idea that we had was using tactile sensors and hyperspectral sensors to actually detect whether a mammary tumor is benign or malignant. This is the tactile sensor that we developed, and this is the hyperspectral image that you will get with the different type of color information that we get. They have both pros and cons, and they complement each other. This has a larger field of view. This has a relatively small field of view. This is only about 2.3 by 2 centimeter interrogation area. So we fuse this information to detect whether the tumor is malignant or benign. So this is outline of my talk. We'll talk about the tactile imaging sensor, which we design. We'll talk about design and the principles. We do a lot of image processing. The novelty of the sensor is in the image processing that we do to detect whether it's malignant or benign. And we'll talk about the hyperspectral imaging sensor. Once again, there's a lot of image processing involved to detect whether it's malignant or benign. We'll talk about the experimental procedure and clinical result. We actually went to University of Pennsylvania vet school because our university didn't have a animal school and did tests on this. Then I'll talk about fusing these two tactile and the hyperspectral data together to come up with a more reliable information on malignancy. Then I'll conclude this talk. This is the schematics of the tactile imaging system. It's a sensing system that we really have. It's based on total internal reflection principle, which I'll talk in a little bit later. We create a thin layer of polydimethylsiloxane, a clear plastic elastomer. We inject lights into it, and depending on the compression, we get an image on the sensor. And this is the tactile imaging sensor sensing principle. By Snell's law, if there is a certain angle, if you inject light into it, they can be transparent. There are two different mediums with different refractive index. And at critical angle, it reflects, it stays on the surface. And at certain angle that's larger than this critical angle, it will totally reflect inside the sensor. So depending on how you inject this light into it, even though this is a transparent medium, this will stay inside unless there is some contour change. If there's a contour change, the angle changes, and there's a diffuse light that comes out, and we can capture this light. And what we do is if there is an inclusion, this one, the green, there's a no inclusion, this green, the black dot over here, there's hard object, whether it's embedded like a tumor or it's on the surface. As long as there is a contour change of this tactile imaging sensor, then we get an image like this. This doesn't show too well, but this is the black and white image. Nothing, if there is nothing, and we'll get this type, this false colored image. And the intensity of this image changes when we do the compression. So we do a lot of image processing of those tactile images that we obtain. We filter the noise, we filter the noise out, we estimate the size, we estimate the mobility. We have various different image process algorithms for this. And what we are looking for is the mechanical properties. The mechanical properties of tumor, the size, mobility, and the Young's modulus, the elasticity information. So elasticity information, because the literature shows the malignant tumors are stiffer, and it's hard compared to the benign tumors. So we estimate this elasticity, and once we get this, we come up with a scoring system with this elastic size and mobility information to detect whether it's a malignant tumor or not. This is our hyperspectral imaging sensor that we have. It's a CCD sensor. It has a liquid crystal tunable filter, so tunes in 10 nanometer band from this has a near-infrared band. It uses near-infrared band because near-infrared band has the deepest tissue penetration. We want to go as deep as possible. So we take 10 nanometer bands of near-infrared band, and we just flood light with it, and we take the images. Some image processing is also done. We smooth this out, and we normalize the data to, then we create this tissue optical index. First thing that we do is we get the absorption, so we get the reflectance information and absorption information of the tissue, and to get this chromophores, which wavelength which actually corresponds to certain type of chromophores. And the literature shows water, lipid, hemoglobin, deoxy, and oxyhemoglobin, the blood, and so those four chromophores can detect whether it's malignant or benign. So to tell those chromophores, we take the second derivative method. We get the absorption spectrum, we take first derivative and second derivative, and we can figure out these negative peaks. And using these four peaks, we calculate this tissue optical index. So this total hemoglobin consists of the deoxy and oxyhemoglobin. So we use the reflectance information of water and blood and lipid. And literature shows that because it's malignant tumor, they form new blood vessels. More blood vessels come, more blood forms. Then there's reflectance information is really increased. So we create this tissue optical index. So higher content of hemoglobin suggests elevated blood volume and new blood vessels forming. Higher water content suggests edema and increased cellularity. Decreased lipid content reflects displacement, and decrease in reflectance intensity with hemoglobin water concentration. So we create this index using the reflectance information from hyperspectral data. Then a lower TOI suggests tumor is malignant, and higher indicates its tumor is benign. So we have this tactile information that gives us malignancy. We have spectral information that gives malignancy. This is the experimental procedure. Oh, I'm speaking too fast. I was preparing for a 15-minute talk, and the chair told me that it's 12 minutes. I thought, I should hurry up, but I think I'm hurrying too much now. Here is the experimental procedure. We went to the University of Pennsylvania vet school, and we marked the tumor, and we took digital examination is what vets usually do. They measure the size of the tumor. Usually they use the caliper, just a ruler basically, and they just feel the tumor out. And tactile and hyperspectral images are captured of the tumor. Then we also took the hyperspectral images. Then the surgeons actually removed the tumor, did the biopsy, and give the histopathology results, whether it's malignant or what type of tumor or cancer that is. Then we compare this with our hyperspectral and tactile data. This is the vets holding onto the dog, and this is our system. These are the spectral images. These are tactile images, false colors, tactile image. This is noise. We have to take this out. This is our typical data of the tactile imaging data. We get the size information, how deep the tumor is, the elasticity, this is the Young's modulus, and mobility, how much it moves, the centroid of this. And using this 1, 2, 3, 4 data, we come up with an index. And using this index, we chose the index to be 3. If it's larger than 3, it's malignant. Less than 3, then it's benign. And this was histopathology results. It was adenoma and carcinoma, and this was cancer and cancer. This is typical of hyperspectral image. This also wavelength was from about 690 to 1100 nanometer. We took 10 nanometer wavelength. And this is malignant. It gets much, much lower reflectance because there's more blood. Blood is darker than tissue. If it's darker, it absorbs more light. When it absorbs light, the reflectance is less. And this is normal tissue, and this is malignant tissue. And this is actually a tumor, but it's benign tumor. So there is some difference between reflectance intensity. So the second derivative method, when you get the reflectance absorption spectrum, you take derivative twice, then you get these negative peaks. And we chose this peak because this is hemoglobin, oxyhemoglobin, lipid, and water 1, 2, 3, 4. We chose these 4 because these are the chromophores that can detect what's malignant or not. Then we developed out of this 4 data, we developed this TOI, the tissue optical index that I talked about. This is the process, just giving the diagram here. And this is the data, the final data. For fusing these two, because we have this spectral information and tactile information, we decided that the hyperspectral information, if the TOI was greater than 36.87, it's benign. It's less than, it's malignant. And if tactile information greater than 3 is malignant, less than 3 is benign. So if it's larger than 3, and if it's this is larger than 36%, it's definitely benign. This was the unknown part. Here we decided to go with tactile. Here we decided to go with the hyperspectral information because hyperspectral had better sensitivity. Tactile had better specificity. Specificity when tumor is non-tumorous, what it says. Sensitivity will say when it's cancerous, how much does it say it's cancer. That's sensitivity and that's specificity. So when we fuse this is just a very simple fusion. We are working on a more complicated, more advanced fusion algorithm here. But if you fuse this way, we get the sensitivity of finding the tumor of 67% and specificity of 83%. Oh, that's 15, not 12? Oh, okay. Okay, then I have to conclude this talk. So tactile and hyperspectral sensor characterize malignant and benign canine mammary tumors, so they don't have to necessarily get the surgery. We had 22 canine data, and the tactile sensor gave 50%, sensitivity 100%. The spectral data gave 71%, sensitivity 76%. When we fuse it, we get 67% and 83%. So these are my collaborators that we worked on. And I have a good 1 minute to answer. Yes.